Okay, here we go. So we start again for the third time, but that's okay. It's all about the technology. I'm going to focus on a couple of things today as you watch this sketch come about. The first is about inspiration. That seems to be popular on the internet right now, as far as in the forums and people asking questions, like, do you need to be inspired to create a work of art, or do you need to be in the mood? And one of the great illustrators of the Golden Age, or pre-Golden Age really, and fantastic teacher was Howard Pyle. And Howard Pyle said, "That is all nonsense. I frequently have to force myself to make a start in the morning, but after a short while I find I can work. Only hard work and regular work will bring success." And I'll have to say that that's just absolutely true. If you're going to be a full-time artist, and that's an artist in any form, whether you're an actor, a dancer, a visual artist, an entertainer, work is work. And you find inspiration from just getting in the studio and getting busy. Back in the 70s when I was a boy, if you made the mistake of telling your gym teacher, gym coach, or football coach, or whatever, "Coach, I'm sick. I don't feel like I can do the workout today," he wouldn't have a problem with that. He'd just tell you, "Okay, then you can just run laps around the football field for the entire hour." So, that was their idea of a compassionate response to your illness. So the idea was, suck it up and take it. And, there's just a lot to be said for that. If you're going to be a professional, if you're going to try and make a living at this, then you have to treat it like you do any other job. And okay, so you're sick. Now, are you sick to the point where you're in bed with 106 fever and you're throwing up or something? Well, no, that's one thing. But if you just feel bad, well, find something you can do that's productive, that maybe is not as taxing as what you normally do. For me, sitting down with a piece of paper and a pencil and just drawing, there's just not the prep work that's involved. There's not the cleanup that's involved with painting. And so mentally, you don't have to just feel like you're getting so deeply involved. You can just kind of relax and let your mind wander. And that's actually what I'm doing here is as you watch this page progress, you'll see that there'll be a break and I'll come back and draw another animal. And all I was doing was I would just get on Google and find, in this case, a picture of an elephant and draw it. And when I felt like it was where I wanted it to be, then I don't know, I just sort of thought, well, what's another animal and what would fit in the space I've got left? And so I would put that down, and I just kept progressing that way. Not really any particular plan involved, just do a drawing. When you like it, feel like it's done, then move on to the next one and just sort of build from there, sort of a very organic process. And, it was fun and it was a learning experience, but it was just a good, productive time to use in the studio without just letting a day die. I'm forgetting to mention, while this came about, see, this is the third time I've tried to record this. The first one, I just babbled on for like 10 minutes and looked over, and my record button was only, you got to push it twice. You push it once and it activates it. You push it twice and it gets it going. And so I forgot to tell you, on this third recording that I had just been sick the day before. I have allergies, and the allergies sometimes will produce something akin to an anaphylactic response where my throat starts closing up, and it makes me really sick and drains me really badly. And I won't go into all the details, it doesn't matter, but needless to say, the day before I was really sick, but I still worked. Well, the next day when I came in the studio, I was just drained. I was shell-shocked. I just had trouble focusing and really thinking, and so I just didn't have the heart to pull out my paints. But I did have my drawing utensils, and so I picked them up and started working, and I spent the day just drawing in my sketchbook and recording. And don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to say I'm a tough guy, and I'm not trying to say your sickness, your illness doesn't matter. It certainly does. But it's just a question of, if you're doing this for fun, well, then do it and have fun. Absolutely. But if you're wanting to be in the arts and actually be an artist, then there are just certain things that you've got to learn to do. And sucking it up and working through bad times is just a part of it. And you have to look at this as no different than if you were in any other job. You've got to produce. And even if you're working and you don't feel particularly inspired, just the act of doing the technical part, just practicing your drawing. If you're a musician, practicing scales, just going up and down the keyboard or up and down the frets of the guitar, just keeping your fingers nimble and your mind sort of active. If you're a dancer, just doing simple, your stretches, things like that, just something to keep you going and not let yourself get out of the practice. So, there's your inspiration for the day. Now, looking at the drawing, everybody has what they enjoy sketching with. I sketch with lots of different materials, pen and ink and watercolor and charcoal, lots of things. But the one medium that I really, really like, I think the best, is colored pencil on colored paper. In this particular instance, let me look here. I'll pull a sketchbook out. This is Strathmore toned paper. It's 9 by 12 sheets. It's the 400 series. And Canson makes two different colors. They make this tan and they make a gray. Both of them are great. It's just the tan is going to actually have a little bit of a color signature to it, more so than the gray. So, if you're thinking in terms of working in various colors, then you've already got a base right there. There are other colored papers you can work on. My Tins, I think it's called, but which is really a pastel paper. But this is just a nice, sturdy paper. It's very somewhat slick. It's not a hot press, but it's sort of got that feel. And it takes a lot of abuse. You can really work on it and erase and work on it and erase and not be afraid that you're going to really tear up the fibers of the paper. So I really like it for that respect. I'm using the colored pencils I tend to use. I've got some of the Barrel Prismacolors, and I don't know if you can hear the siren in the background. I can. I apologize. I live in the city. I've also got Polychromos. I'm trying to see who makes these. Faber-Castell. Okay, Faber-Castell makes them. They are Polychromos. And my goodness, there's a whole bunch of colors. And I tend to like on a page to have, at least 3 different colors that I use. The reason being that rather than just using black on white paper, if you start getting your paper cluttered with a bunch of sketches, they'll just all run into each other and obscure each other, and you can't tell where one starts and the other ends. And if that's what you like doing and you can work it out, then that's fine. But for me, I really like having 2, 3, even 4 colors, because you can overlap them, you can run them on top of each other, and they just have that real organic feel that something's just built on top of itself, and I really like that. Let's see, I also use Derwent watercolor pencils. Of course, they are water soluble, so you can use them as watercolor, but I like them as colored pencils as well. The white is, that's a Derwent Chinese white. I like it quite a bit, but I've also got Caran d'Ache. I've got, looking over here to find sort of a pastel type pencil. Conti of Paris, and that's real good. So I think they're all pretty nice. You'll see, and I apologize, occasionally I will swap over to my left hand and draw. I do pretty much work both hands, and I forget that the camera's there and that I'm covering it up. So, but one thing, just partially because I'm lazy, I do not want to draw with 2 pencils or 2 paintbrushes with 2 different colors and have to put one down and pick the other up, put one down, pick the other up. It's annoying. So very often, if I'm going to be working, with a dark pencil and then a white highlight, and I'm going back and forth, and I'll have one in each hand and work. Just because it's faster, and like I said, it's annoying to put something down, pick something else up, and just go back and forth and back and forth. But anyway, at this point you can see I'm working on the zebra, and one thing to point out is if you're working on something like a zebra, a giraffe, or a couch that's got a real prominent pattern, don't get lost in that pattern. It's real easy to forget that pattern is on a rounded surface. So put your pattern in, but then don't be afraid to obscure the pattern in the shadows. Soften it up, get rid of it maybe. If it's in the shadow, just maybe get rid of that pattern entirely. But then darken up in the shadow, but then in the highlights, again, you might even obscure the pattern in the highlights. Again, just don't forget that a pattern is going to be on a rounded surface, and it's real easy to forget that, and you don't use that pattern to your advantage. If nothing else, one thing you'll want to do is make sure that your pattern follows the contour of the subject. So if you're working on the stripes of a zebra, then make sure that the stripes actually curve with the surface and they're not just flat and don't make any sense. Let's see, as I move over to the baboon, I'm still, I've now moved. You can see I've gone to not sure what color this is, magenta of some sort. And these are as archival as pencils can be. Some materials are more archival than others, and pencils very often don't tend to be particularly archival. These they claim to be as archival as pencils can be, and that's the Faber-Castell Polychromoses. I think they're marked with 3. They got 3 stars. That's supposed to be their most archival. And if that's something that's important to you, then you might want to look at their color charts and just pick out the ones that are the most archival. If you are going to work in colored pencils or in pencils period, be aware that every pencil you buy from every manufacturer, they have their own size. It's very, very frustrating. You are not going to get away with one pencil sharpener that sharpens all pencils. At least I haven't been able to. And that's because like I said, every manufacturer makes theirs a different diameter. The Polychromos is a different diameter than the Derwent. The Derwent's a different size than the Prismacolor. And if they're a little bit too small, then they fit in sort of wobbly and crooked in the sharpener, and it makes it where they don't sharpen correctly and they'll break. Or if they're too big, well, they just won't fit in the hole. So I found that I've had to have quite a few, sometimes literally one sharpener per brand of pencil. I don't like it, but that's just the way it is. But also, if you can look at your pencils when you buy them and they haven't been pre-sharpened, look at the tip and look at it straight on and look and see where the lead is sitting inside the shaft, because some manufacturers are better at this than others, but a lot of manufacturers, their pencils are not in the middle, the leads are not in the middle of the shafts. And what that means is when you go to sharpen your pencil, as you rotate the pencil, you're not rotating in a concentric circle. You're rotating almost like on the outside of a record. And so the lead is just getting hit by the sharpener every other cycle instead of just all the way around. And so that's where you can get a lot of breakage, and you can just get pencils that are just impossible to sharpen. And some of these, like, the Caran d'Ache pencils, those things are $5 a piece. And so you don't want a pencil that, you sharpen and it breaks and sharpens and breaks. And now all of a sudden in one session, you've gone through a $5 pencil. So if you can, be aware of that. And I just saw I was erasing with what looked like a pencil, and it is let's pull this up and see. This is a Faber-Castell Perfection 7058. These are really neat. I carry with me 3 different kinds of erasers. I have of course, I have a kneaded eraser, but I also have, one of those white rubber erasers, and I don't see one with a name on it right now, but it's probably by Faber-Castell as well, and they're real good. I like them a lot. But if you want to get really tight in a real specific area and almost draw with the eraser, pulling some highlights or something out, then having one of these Perfection 7058s from Faber-Castell are real good, because you can sharpen it to a decent point. I mean, certainly more of a point than you're going to get with an eraser. And you can get into real tight spots and pull things out. So I really recommend having several of those. Now, as you can see, as this is progressing along, I've started doing some lettering, and I love art. I just love all kinds of art, and I love fonts. I've always loved calligraphy and the fonts that you'd see on like chalkboard menus. They'll have like 5 or 6 different fonts, and they're all arranged in these wonderful patterns, and talking about today's menu and everything. And I've just always loved those. And so as I was drawing these animals, all of a sudden it hit me. Why not put the names of the animals on there? So I would stop and look online and start seeing, well, just an interesting font that I could put on there with the animals. And this is a neat way of very organically learning to build a composition, a complex composition. Some are going to be more successful than others, but you just sit down and you think, okay, well, I've arranged these 3 drawings like this. Well, where would I put the word zebra? And you probably saw earlier that I had started to put the zebra in one place, didn't like it, didn't like where it was going to go, how it was going to fit in the composition. So I erased it and picked it up put it down somewhere else. And you'll see throughout the drawing that I just continue to do that, and I just keep filling the page with fun, interesting things. So I think that's probably about all that I'm going to comment on this. I'll probably just let this play out the rest of the drawing. I might speed it up in a few places, but the main thing is, again, talking earlier about inspiration, just not letting yourself get bogged down if you're sick, or if you just don't feel inspired. Well, don't worry about it. Just go in and have a good time doing something, doing anything that interests you. Sitting down and drawing some animals, sitting down drawing people, or anything that you want to do, and then playing with it. See what someone else has done, and then try to emulate them a little bit. I hadn't really thought of this looking sort of like I was saying, the chalkboard menus until I was already into the drawing. And after I finished the baboon, I was thinking, well, what do I want to do? And then it hit me, oh, yeah, do the lettering. So you never know what's going to come about. And also on these things, give yourself the permission to fail. You know, I was not doing this to be a finished work of art. This was something I was doing for my sketchbook, for the pleasure of doing it. I needed to work, even though I didn't feel like doing something really, really complex that would really tax my mind. So I was totally free to go in here, and if the drawings turned out terrible, then they turned out terrible. If the composition was terrible, then it was terrible. But at least I did something. At least I was having fun, building my skills, just working. And so, yeah, when you come in doing something like this, don't put any pressure on yourself. The fact that you've had the discipline to come in and actually sit down and work, even though you didn't feel inspired for whatever reason, that's enough right there that you should feel really good about yourself and what you're doing. So then don't go in and beat up on yourself if you wind up with a drawing that you throw away, that's okay. Frankly, if you don't throw away a certain number of drawings and paintings a year, if you feel like every painting you've done this year has been a just spot-on, spectacular painting, then I'll tell you you're doing something wrong, because you're not pushing yourself, you're not expanding your boundaries, and you need to do that. You need to expand. You need to play and see, well, how can I improve what I'm doing? And the only way to improve is to fail. The only way to improve is to try things that you're not good at, that you don't know how to do. So I'm trying to remember, but I think it was Zig Ziglar, maybe. Either him or one of the really great inspirational speakers that I've listened to off and on. No, I think it was Wayne Dyer. I think his tagline was "Fail your way to the top." Now, someone in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong, but I always thought that was so cool. The whole idea of failing your way to the top, to embrace the whole idea that, yeah, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do things that just don't work. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Use that as a learning experience to build and get better at your craft. So, okay, I said earlier I was going to be quiet, and so now I am. So I'm going to let this play out, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of it. I may put a little bit of music on so you'll have something to listen to, but if you don't like my music, you can always turn it off and turn some of your own on. All right, well, y'all have a good day. If you've enjoyed this episode of The Arthropologist, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more episodes like this, think about subscribing. I'm Bill Wilson, and I'm The Arthropologist.